Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Let me see if I managed to share my screen without any problem. Do you see my screen?
Yes, perfect. You can go ahead.
Perfect. So, thank you very much. I'm going to talk about a framework I'm building, which I call the 3 dimensions of open innovation. But first of all, a little bit of context information. So, I come from the business world. I'm a practitioner. I discovered open innovation in BBVA in 2012. Some boss asked us to create a business unit called Open Innovation when there was no bank in the world and no company in Spain that was officially working in this. And that's when I always say I discovered what I wanted to do when I grew old. And for me, it was a very fortunate event and has marked everything that I've done afterwards. So we went in a journey of implementing, experimenting, and finding the limits and what, in summary, what open innovation could do for us as a big corporation. And this was the journey. It was pretty successful. I won't delay too much in it. But at the end, in 2018, I was wondering what would be next after this. So I decided to leave the corporation and I went to work with other ecosystems because mainly I wanted to explore the connection with other sectors. So for me, the greatest thing comes with multi-sectorial open innovation. So I'm working right now with some partners. One of them is South Summit. They bring together corporations mainly in Spain and Spanish-speaking world. So all the IBEX 35 companies are here, and we work together into understanding what will come from this open cross-sector open innovation. It's a meeting point, an open innovation network. And also with the Nordic Future Innovation Network, which is something similar, but in the Nordics, working with the 5 Nordic countries, and also working in a cross-industry and collaboration innovation. So in all these cases, we are looking into what really means to do multi-sector, multi-country, multi-player open innovation, and what are the boundaries and where can we really capture the value. And whenever I talk to them, because all of them are practitioners and we are discovering what we are doing together, I always like sharing this because I feel really like the academic geek. Of course, I'm not at all, but I always like to share what is the basic definition of open innovation and a common understanding of what we can do together. And in this case, focusing in the distributed aspect of it, the purpose, no, or being actively managing it, the knowledge flow, and the organizational boundaries, understanding that there are internal boundaries and external boundaries. And with all this, I really like to think about this and think about how we are building in the reality the boundaries and how we can help organizations to do that. I've been trying, not successfully so far, but I'm not done with that thing yet, to bring this into the academia, trying to frame this as a PhD. I will do that someday, but I'm too much, I think, embedded into the practitioner mindset. So always trying to think into the immediateness on how to implement it or how to create the real solutions. And at the end, I always also translate this to the corporations with this quote that, by the way, I discovered in one of our trips to SAP offices together with the European Innovation Forum. This was in the door of the bathroom. And I think this helps corporations and organizations that are going into open innovation or collaboration efforts to understand what we are talking about. So, as I said, I like talking about open innovation, but also bringing the practicalities of this. So, I kind of trying to create an equivalence to what you are talking when you talk from the academic perspective. What I'm trying to find or trying to understand and to bring from my previous experience is how can organizations better prepare for open innovation and understand what can an open innovation do for them, because the realities of many organizations that right now are really being pressured to bring this into the reality is that they don't know how to begin. So how can we help them? And so that's how I came up with the 3 dimensions of open innovation framework. And the idea is to have a tool that helps to analyze, understand, discuss, and question the mechanisms behind the innovation implementation in an organization and the dynamics of collaboration. Okay. So the general notice before beginning is for you to understand that I am sharing you the practitioner, what I share with other corporations, but what I want to think together with you, or if you can give me insights, is how can we structure this into usable knowledge that we can articulate in a way that is somehow possibly connected to an academic study or research or whatever. Okay, so but I have my practitioner hat today. Okay, just because I am so ashamed of any flimsy effort in the academia that I do. So but this is what I do best. So here it is. So there are 3 aspects or 3 dimensions for the model. The first is related to the strategy. The second is processes, organization, procedures, and KPIs. It's the internal part. And then the mindset alignment in the collaboration with others. Okay. So in the strategy, and this comes really from my experience both within BBVA and without, is that the long-term problem when we're talking about innovation in general, and in particular open innovation strategies, is that they tend to not be aligned to the general strategy, and so there needs to be an active effort to connect the innovation strategy with the overall company strategy and to keep them aligned through time, because in the evolution sometimes things misaligned. So I call them the mysteries, but in reality they reflect problems that I actually had within BBVA, and I see with other corporations that are having this, is that in BBVA, in my case, when I was trying to understand what we were trying to achieve with the open innovation strategy and how we were helping the organization to do that, nobody wanted to share with me the strategy. They told me it was a secret document. And even to the point that they would say, I can share one slide, but please don't tell that I give it to you. And so how am I supposed to understand what we are building, how it is helping to the overall strategy? So for me, this is a mystery we need to solve here. And the second one is the schizophrenic strategy in innovation. So the basic and the most common example is that we want to do innovation, really disruptive projects, but please give me the business plan. Tell me how much we will get from this in this year. So disruption usually takes more than a year. So this creates a stress or a tension on how to achieve these things that are actually incompatible. So I created the Open Innovation Strategy Canvas, which is the definition is a strategic management and open innovation tool that allows you to design, define, challenge, discuss, improve, and communicate your open innovation strategy and its connection to the company strategy. Okay, so the thing is here, well, so this is a model. So I was inspired, of course, in Alex Osterwalder's business model canvas, and trying to generate a simple tool to have the right frame for discussion. Because in many cases, I discovered that that there was not such secrecy or unwillingness to share the strategy, but there weren't the right moments to discuss about that nobody was there at the same time in the same place to share and discuss the ideas, and the finance guy never met with the innovation guy and agree or have like the CEO mandate on how much we are willing to invest as a company in these innovation efforts. So this canvas aims to be a discussion tool where we can analyze each of these variables grouped in 3 big segments. So there are 13 variables, and the first group is the strategy variables centered in into asking and discussing how far we or how deep we want to open when we're doing the open innovation efforts, how far we want to get into this openness or how close to the core, you know. And this first discussion, we when you open with this first question and everyone in the room, either with the board or either with the innovation groups or with a mix of teams who are working for the innovation strategy, then we begin with the very first encounter, you know. So each of the groups usually tend to have a different perspective on how far we want to get with innovation, and this discussion then is opened and we begin or we continue by discussing the other variables. So what time frame do we want to work with, the depth of change, certainty of the result, or the risk aversion that we have as a company, what kind of business models we want to experiment. And in terms of the internal organization, the geographies we want to impact, are we focusing only in one country, in more countries? We want to impact, like BBVA was, we want to change the world. And that was the articulation of the mission that we had, no? In terms of property, do you want to own everything? And these are really basic questions. We are not getting into deep IP discussions, but the very first question is, do we want to own every innovation that we have, or we are willing to share and experiment? These create the right kind of questions and discussion, and discussions to have from here. And then,
Marisol, can I ask a question?
yes.
You mentioned that you were inspired by Alex Osterwalder, who, by the way, is going to be our opening keynote speaker at the WOIC on December 10th, for anybody who's paying attention to that. My question to you, though, is why did you choose not to use the business model canvas as part of your open innovation strategy canvas? Why did you instead decide to create your own representation, not only for open innovation, but also for strategy?
Well, I think that business model canvas is down the river from this, you know. So not
So it comes at a later stage.
yes.
So this is something that would precede the development of the business model canvas.
Yes. And for me, the mission here is to open some discussions that usually management don't have, you know. So they have clearer ideas for the discussion, the questions that you open, not only with the business model canvas, but also with the value proposition canvas, you know. So these are like previous questions, like, that's
okay.
And so, we have the open innovation set of variables, and we can look into detail on them, but they are not too complex, but they are really willing or looking for the people who are participating in this to ask questions, you know, not only financiers, but also like question themselves on why they are doing the things that they are doing right now. Some of these insights, by the way, came from Wim's feedback some time ago, like the intended results, for example. What are we trying to achieve with innovation to create new processes, products, markets, and business models? Or which stakeholders we want to collaborate with? And then I added some questions here, just general, like, what do you think as an organization is your main strength? And what are your main challenges? Somehow in Graham's gap insight that you had before, because this will open the door also to analyze if the collaborations that we have are helping us to really balance these strengths and challenges. And then some questions related, what are the satisfactions with the results that you have so far with your general strategy? Do you think you need a change? Are you follower or leader? Because not everybody needs to be like breaking boundaries and exploring around, you know. And the maturity of the open innovation or the innovation process within the organization. What I do with this, I do some workshops online. This is, for example, a model of an online format. So people answer in terms of what is my current strategy, signaled here with the triangles, and what I want to be the future, you know? So here we're mapping out the difference on how we are and where we want to be, that somehow can help to create a very basic baseline for a strategy or for a tactical plan, you know, how to bridge this gap between the present and the future. Some other exercise that we've done is what does the strategy is supposed to be and how we are acting right now, you know, for example, or a comparison on what the innovation teams be compared to the CEO, for example, you know. And I do this in workshops. I began doing this in printing, you know, in big workshops. One of the things is that I have access to many corporations from many different sectors. And so far, I sampled 118 corporations from 11 countries in 19 different sessions to exercise with teams within the same company to compare perspectives from different roles of the same company. Well, right now it's already 4, but I haven't uploaded them into my framework. And there have been some discussions within the same sector and some discussions within different sectors of the same region. And so there are some really very initial findings that I'm still analyzing and trying to work out, because also with COVID, this information needs to be really updated. But people, so in general, for example, right now, even strategies are mainly based in the cross. People are willing to go to the core, for example, or they like to have, or they will to have impact in the long term, but the day-to-day at the end wins the battle of innovation investment. No, the same too with disruption and depth of change, or the risk aversion. Really, there are few companies that identify as risk willing, with a lot of willingness for risk. There's a balance in terms of acquisition, partnership, and co-developing. And some companies are exploring, but they also like to experiment in investment, for example. No? In terms of geographical implications, there's this acknowledgement that we're in a global game, whether we like it or not, because even if you are not impacting a global or willing to work in the global framework, global companies come to your own turf. So there's this acknowledgement from all companies. And that regulation is important. Need to discuss IP, revenue share, data share. And there's so many questions around this because not many companies are prepared into going into these schemes. In terms of the open innovation variables, of course, they want to do both inside out and outside in open innovation with a mix of models, but with COVID, these collaboration models have changed. And we see a trend into trying to explore new collaboration models, but trying to understand how we can do it in distance. But also they are needed to get the rhythm that COVID transformation is requesting from companies. And well, some interesting insights here, like some companies are skeptic of working with startups because of previous experiences. That was one of my main surprises, because I thought that many organizations were willing to work with, and there's the willingness to work with universities, government, and maybe other schemes that might come up from this, but they don't know how, because also I think there's in some discussions it comes up that the calendars and timelines for universities not always helps to this collaboration partnership. But well, so the discussions are really interesting in this sense.
Marisol, could I ask about one thing? Because it seems that you kind of you treat your results as a survey, and I was wondering, so could you tell us some basic information about companies that you were talking to? Are these like only large companies, or is there like a mix of large SME and startups, or maybe there are actually many startups that have very bad experience working with other startups.
Are you referring to this bad experience with the startups here?
No, in general. So who are the companies that you talk to? Like how big are these companies and what are the sectors? What sectors are represented?
All of these are corporations, all of those who had answered the question. Corporations and some in Colombia, I also access some big, how do you say, like big and top medium-sized companies with local local markets. Here I have all sectors, and I have public and private companies. The common aspect with all of these is that they are willing to work or they are working currently in open innovation strategies, you know. And so we have these discussions where one of the most interesting sessions I had the company of public water management in Madrid. We had also like electric infrastructure in Spain. We had Ferrovial, who manages like airports and the Panama Channel and all these big infrastructure things. We had two banks, we had consultancy companies, and each of them were presenting how they structured their open innovation strategy. And at the beginning, one of them said it was the one from Correos, the mailing system, public post system in Spain. He said, "Well, I know that everybody will say the same things as me, you know." And at the end, in that session, we had 24 companies, more or less, and everybody said something different. But we had common agreements. Like, for example, everybody was worried about the impact of change of management every now and then, for example, and some things that I will come afterwards to talk. So yeah, I have a fair representation of all sectors. Retail, yeah. I will articulate this better, but right now I haven't had.
Thanks a lot for clarifying this.
Okay.
Very interesting stuff, by the way.
Yeah, I like it. I enjoyed that. So later on, we move to the second dimension, which is processes, organization, procedures, and KPIs. I used this acronym before knowing that K-pop, Korean pop existed, but now it's like that and it's published. So, and this is like it is. So the idea is like, now we know the strategy, we need to work with internal processes, organization, procedures, and the KPIs to make sure that the organization is set to work towards that strategy. I always try to explain that different organs and systems working for the same goal, but each of them should be aligned, because the lack of integrity, and I can assure that this is one of my top learnings in all this life, is that the friction and anxiety and waste that is generated throughout the organization from the lack of alignment is terrible. And it creates lots of suffering and money loss and everything. Whereas if we try to create this alignment, every effort helps to diminish this friction. So here, for me, the mysteries are the disconnected organization. How can we solve these kind of problems, like, oh, this project is not in my priorities, and they don't answer you. And I've seen this so many times. So we had some insights before, let me see, about the bottleneck and dynamics analysis in the general, when you were talking, Asta, about the relationship of all the players in the organization. And that happens also within the organization. And I use these variations of this canvas to analyze the full ecosystem relations. But the most important part here is to begin the thinking within the organization. So what we do, each of the squares aims to be a space to think about the people who are intervening in the open innovation process. In the case of BBVA, everybody said like procurement, compliance, technology guys were like the limitations. They were very bad people. They didn't want innovation. They were like the worst of the worst in terms of innovation. No? But when we analyze this, the procurement had very specific goals about optimization, and even the people within the procurement department, they received their bonus in terms of the money they could save from the previous contract. And so they were not so much willing to experiment or create new contracts with new vendors because of all these heavy KPIs that they had. No? So way to try to understand this, in my perspective, when we sit with these people and it works, is to begin thinking about each of the departments that we have. What are their goals as departments, or even as individual leaders and managers, and think about what are the limitations, or why right now they are not able to help towards, or to work towards this goal. And three main questions. Right now, are they critical for the open innovation process? Will they be in the future? Are they connected? Will they need to be in the future? Or are they interested or not to work and they should be? Sometimes, funnily enough, there are departments that are involved in the process and they shouldn't be. We can create efficiency, so they will be like, now they are connected, and in the future they shouldn't be. So we can create also a map of situations. And then here is a question about the general perception of connectedness, how we perceive this area connected to the goal. And when we map out all the relevant departments, we can easily understand who are our internal emotional sponsors for the thing, because at the end, because this is in reality an internal support and politics and everything, you need to leverage on the organization, and moreover for new stuff, and understand and create and identify where are the bottlenecks, and understand maybe the first thread of why, so we can begin creating strategic and specific plans for this. Here we have also some general questions like level of connectedness, satisfaction with results, and need for a change. These discussions are really, really helpful, because people usually don't stop to think about the departments. They only focus on the limitations that they have. And with this, we open doors to begin unblocking or unlocking the limitations that are there in the process. And in the case of BBVA, we came up here with a map of processes, it was kind of a subway map. And when should we involve people in the innovation process? We came up with the identification that procurement should be involved from the beginning, for example, and compliance and risk, because they could be showstoppers in the innovation process. No? So some conclusions like that can come from this.
Marisol, Graham here. Can I ask you just one very quick question for clarity? You say, you talk here about, I love the work, by the way, it's fantastic, but you make the comment, we came up with the view that they should or shouldn't be involved, whether they are critical or connected. Who is we?
Well, me and my team.
Okay, because I was trying to figure out, if you were to say to procurement, you should not be involved, that might be the last sentence you ever complete, So how do you then, this point, because it's a really important point you're making, right? Coming to a view. The question is, what do you then do with the view?
Well, yeah, for example, in case of procurement, or in my case, what I did is I executed specific interviews with all these departments, you know?
Right.
And some of them were more willing, some others not so much. And I discovered, and so when talking to them, they even told me the problems, and they said, hey, like compliance team, I don't have enough team. We are only 2 people to evaluate all the projects here. And I was able to add on to the efforts to ask for more people for that team, okay, with a specific arguments, So in that case, we was compliance and me together, you know.
Got it.
And in the procurement case, we, the procurement team and I, created a common procurement process. So the we changes, but always it was.
Thank you.
And then the next thing is that KPIs have implications. I say that tell me how you're being measured, and I'll tell you how you behave. And there's a certain perversion in the KPIs, and you also asked us, I talked a little bit about it before. And here I talk about the mystery of the opposite KPIs, and we had a terrible case here when implementing one of the innovation projects. It turned out that we were trying to overcome some overdraft problems. Some customers, when they did a lot of overdraft, they left the company because of the overdraft charges. So to solve that, we create an artificial intelligence scheme so we can anticipate that behavior and give some credit. But there was a department that lived from the overdraft commissions, and they were stopping the project, you know. So when we identified that, we could help to change the KPIs for that team and give them some money from this new loyalty scheme. And I also remember that in one of the World Open Innovation conferences, I came up with a challenge about how to measure open innovation, because I was always thinking on how to report within the organization the success of what we were doing. And in all tables, the KPIs that they came up with were financial KPIs, you know. And my problem was that we didn't have any immediate implication in financial KPIs, you know. And so the distance to the money was more than 1 year, so it was not relevant for the financial reports. How can we articulate this? So what I'm thinking, and this is still, we have so much work to, I have so much work to do in this case, is first of all, not all KPIs act at the same level. So we have financial, customer engagement, innovation activity, influence and network, organizational and culture, and maybe other dimensions that we can have here added. I have, of course, another canvas here. And in this canvas, what I propose is an exercise when we can map out and analyze what are we doing today to fulfill the objectives for the future. Like if I want to run a marathon in 3 years, I need to train today, you know? So how can I measure the contribution for that future goal today and report it to the management in the right way? And also to think about, actively push people into thinking about KPIs that affect the strategy, that affect innovation, and that affect organization. So how this works is that I give post-its of different colors to people to begin filling out KPIs for each of these types and position them if they are contributing or measuring the short term, the midterm, and the long term impact, you know, today. And then how they are affecting this strategic innovation and organization dimension. So everyone at first only fills out green post-its, you know. And but that, so here's the problem about the KPIs in innovation, because we don't have money at the very beginning, and then the stakeholders get tired about this, and then they defund the full open innovation area at some point, you know. In BBVA, we were running up to our 6th year, and we still were growing in budget because of the relevance of what we did here, you know, and showing that there's the way for innovation, number of needs, the startups, the pilots, the learnings, the number of partnerships, how we are building towards the greater goal, always connected to the strategic objectives of the organization. Then the financial guys and everyone understand what we are working on, you know, and we are also showing in a better way the results. And I had one boss that always said that we were giving them milks and cookies while the big dinner will be served in the big table, you know. So this was our milks and cookies, showing people that we were moving forward. And there's still something that I haven't included here, which is the value of mistakes. So those are the KPIs that I presented to to the CEO and the management in BBVA. I never used money, just by principle, you know, and it worked out. We were just showing the pipeline, and the money, I left that part for the business units, because then the business units would fight for innovation because it impacted in the results. It worked pretty well. But there was a big questioning all the time about this is not efficient, because you have a lot of pilots and then you only have so many real projects. So there was a discussion on the value of the scraps, no, and the learnings and whatever happened in the way. I think there's still some work to be done here, also to to be able to articulate in the corporation conversation the value of the innovation process, not only in the final results, but also in what the organization learns and captures from these discards and the decision of not to go into a business. If you validate this early on, then maybe you are saving losses for the future. If you haven't heard about this, take a look into the Failure Institute efforts. They are also researching about failure, the value of failure. But Leticia Gasca, which is one of the founders, says that this mantra about failing fast is a little bit evil, and maybe we should add something about fail mindfully. I advise you to look into this. So how can we not just generally say we are failing a lot and trying to fall in the other way of the equation, but really value the mindfulness of the failure. And we've been talking about failure for so long, since I found this article, Henry's article from 2003, but really we haven't integrated into the corporate reports, you know how. So for me, this is a really big question. And we are still talking about failure, but there's, for me, a lot to be said about this. And then the third dimension, and I will go really fast into this, is the mindset alignment. So once we've aligned our heads with the strategies and the bodies with the procedures, organization, and processes and KPIs, now we're ready to talk to others. You know, so those corporations that ask first, who should I work with? Tell me one startup that I need to work with. No, first of all, need to ask why, what's the strategy, and whatever. Now we are ready to ask who you want to collaborate with. And so, well, as I was saying, strategy goes to align like the head, PopK the body, and then the mindset helps you to look into the others, no? But there are some values behind this, and the values and the ethical part about it for me is really important as well. And it comes continuously. People end up talking about integrity, transparency, generosity, care, trust. How do we integrate this in the equation? Well, there's a lot to be said about this, but still, for what I know from my experience, if we don't modulate and manage this correctly, this won't work at the end. No, it breaks because of the reality of the dynamics between the people. No? So here we're talking about the mystery of trust. And in the end, for me, the practical question is, can what you expect and what I expect coexist in the long term? So are we setting like the right building blocks to make this work in the long term? And the players here are so many and so varied, and run to many and many to one and many to many, depending on the kind of collaborations that you have. Many of the corporations that are work with startups that, of course, now are engines of corporate innovation. And I like this a lot, this basic 2x2 chart proposed by this paper, because it helps those who are beginning the open innovation process to understand the possibilities of collaboration, or at least open the discussion about this. So I use this as one of the building blocks for the collaboration discussion. Well, and I showed like the multiple variables or possibilities that we can have from this. And also in understanding that the frameworks of the innovation that you want to have. We had this in the strategy canvas, but also in the collaboration, you need to make sure what's the time frame of whatever effort or collaboration you want to do, because companies are focused mainly in the day-to-day, but startups or innovators or the VCs are the other way around, so when they begin, they are trying to look into the very future, and that difference creates a basic gap of understanding. And so they begin to mix when there has been some time or some willingness to look into the future from both sides. And this match of perspective creates some challenges in the basic discussion. So these two elements, combined with the scarcity and excess exercise, also sets a very basic level of discussion. It's like the Open Innovation 101, and many corporations haven't asked these questions internally. They have a startup program because everybody has a startup program, or they collaborate with. They have a VC because someone in the golf course they told them that it was a good investment or whatever, you know. But in reality, building the reasoning or the rationale for this, and maybe from this mapping and dimensioning, we can dig deeper into the right kind of partnership models that they can have. And also, we had a discussion last week where I invited Marcel Bogers, and we talked about the mistake, and we ended up talking about the not only like the revenue share and IP share, but also the failure share within all these experiments. We should also have a model to think about failure across organizational boundaries in this case, and this is also like a continuing of the KPI aspect. And of course, besides the IP, revenue share, data share, customer relationship ownership, and many other um, distribution of assets that are generated within the relationship. And that's it. That's everything I wanted to share for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Marisol, for your fantastic presentation. I really learned a lot from you. Not just the content, also your presentation skill. I really need to learn from you. So I think, let me check. Who would like to share his or her comments first? Or Bajun? Graham? Yeah.
Oh, no, yeah, okay.
Okay.
So I do have a question. I don't think I put it in the comments yet, Marisol. Fantastic work. I really love it. And what again is buzzing around my mind, and I just have to share it with you, is the level in an organization at which this plays out, right? So on the one hand, you're talking about all of this mapping and the canvases and what have you in relation to kind of tying together strategy and innovation activities. On the other hand, I sometimes hear the phrase innovation strategy, and next to it, I hear innovation project, like a tangible project that's actually happening. And I'm just wondering whether some of the elements that are in the canvases are actually playing out at a strategic level or at the individual project level within the company, and whether there might be a difference.
Well, yeah, it's also my fault because maybe the different language, I'm not, so some of them misuse of words is also because of not being my natural way of explaining, but also for for many of the corporations. And by the way, right now in Spain, for example, there's a trend of these big and not corporations, but big size companies to begin implementing these strategies. And for them, it's a project.
Yeah.
So we're in the project of implementing innovation. So that's why I also sometimes talk about the innovation project. But always in these terms, I'm always willing or pushing for them to think at the strategic level.
Right.
And also the other way to think this is that this should be iterative and continuous, So in 1 year, we need to ask the same question and validate the difference and the distance in all the dimensions, because these changes, and it can also be applied for a specific project.
Right.
So once someone filled all the canvases just for a specific project. By the way, I didn't show results for the others because the time didn't allow me, but yeah.
And I mean, thanks for your answer. And I think, a comment I would make is this. I think probably after about 10 years of open innovation at Unilever, I was walking along the beach one day when I suddenly realized what the issue was. And it came into a phrase, and the phrase was, get ready to partner. So what we realized is that everybody was partnering and everybody was doing open innovation. But if you really asked the question, the grassroots question, are you ready to do this? And then if you'd had this tool, your tool literally, to express the dimensions of readiness and the dimensions of thoughtfulness behind the actions you were about to take, then you would have realized that you were already in partnership. So you were going down various forms of open innovation and collaboration that were doomed to fail because half of the organization behind you didn't want to do it, but you were doing it anyway. And I think a massive value of this is to make implicit things explicit very early on in the process, so you can make a call on whether you want to go down that route or not. So great stuff. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that insight, Graham. In fact, that you just verbalized really well something that I'm always thinking about and really adamant when I work with anyone or somebody asks to me, because we don't want to be a factory of zombie projects that are not approved because of your internal processes, and that's the worst. In BBA, we killed many startups by waiting, and that's a drama. I don't know if anyone understands the drama of this, because there are people behind this, And so I think that was the main issue. Thank you for your insight.
Thank you.
Henry.
Sorry.
Yeah, Marisol, thank you so much, because although I've seen some of this before, I haven't seen it all together in one place. So thank you very much for putting this all together for us in one place. And I can see that you're making a lot of progress here. So I guess my first comment is keep going. I think it's promising. A second thought at a high level is I think it might really be a good organizing or orchestration tool to link this to an open innovation maturity model, because some of these considerations are really important when you're just getting going with open innovation. Then others become important once you've done a few pilots and now you're trying to grow it within the organization. You have different aspects, different canvases in your suite of canvases. Still, others might come later when you're really trying to scale this to multiple parts of the company or maybe multiple geographies around the world. And so thinking about a maturity model and when you would plug in which of these canvases, I think would be a way to create some further texture to what you're doing. I really also liked your opposing KPIs, because I think this one links back to what Asta was telling us in the incumbent businesses trying to use platforms versus the born platform companies. Is the born platform companies don't have any legacy, don't have any residual KPIs from the earlier business, and so everything aligns, whereas the people that were getting the late payment fees from the bank actually lose revenue when they adopt your solution to extend more credit and reduce the defaults or the being out of compliance. And I think it's a very granular way to identify sources of friction in trying to do any organizational change process, but also open innovation. And then lastly, I really liked the collaboration canvas. I think it brings together visually some things that I think fit together well, but I hadn't thought about them at the same place until I saw your visual template.
That's the one that the less tested one. I only have like 45 answers to that one.
Only 45.
Yes, and I'm still rolling it out, so I'm more than willing to experiment it with anybody you want. Thank you. Or ideas or whatever, yeah.
Agnieszka, yeah, go ahead.
Let me quickly echo what has been already said and mentioned in chat, like great work. I really love it. I think that's it's very, very rich and at the same time, very, very simple, easy to understand for people to join your workshop. So congratulations on creating very successful processes. Once I get to teaching at some point, I really would like to test it with my students on small and medium-sized enterprises and to see the results, right? See how people perceive that and what would be the outcomes. Maybe we could work together on making some changes or adjustments. I think there's a growing field out there. And just one future-oriented thought. Let me challenge you a little bit. And I'm wondering whether maybe at some point you could also think of some sort of an adjustments to the framework, or maybe in developing new framework or new processes for policymakers, because these are the people that basically decide on lots of innovation policies. At the EU level, we have people that try to implement lots of new programs just to support companies and their innovation efforts. And I think it would be great for them to go through such a process and really try to get this comprehensive view of what is that they actually would like to achieve, and especially the part about these sort of conflicting views, like when these new changes are going to eat up my bonus. I think this is very important because they're going to be some conflict of interest. So again, congratulations. I would like to see more because I think it's really great stuff.
Thank you very much. Yeah, of course, the adaptations are really interesting. You know, I have one adaptation that I tested out with some startups. Like it was like 15 startups in that case, to see this from the startup perspective. You know, and then to use this as a commercial tool, because I asked them to fill out the corporate perspective, like to put in the corporate shoes and fill out the form. So they do the exercise to know their customer before approaching them. And it went really well. So adaptations, I think they're really interesting in terms of discovering the future. I also did an exercise with a group of really medium-sized companies. And I think in that case, I don't know if it was the kind of corporations, it needed to have an adaptation to create more basic concepts, you know, so they were like easily understood. And I will be more than willing to work with you into testing this. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think we have a lot of comments in the chat, but we have to end our seminar. It's time.